is this? The United States Supreme Court said that Congress has the sole power to declare the dignity and effect of titles emanating from the United States. They said the whole legislation of the government in reference to public land declares the land patent to be superior and conclusive evidence of the legal title. It's the same conversation we have with the cars. What is the proof of ownership of the car? The manufacturer's certificate of origin. Okay, well, what is the proof of ownership of land? The land patent. They said this whole legislation in reference to legislation declares the land patent to be the superior and conclusive evidence of the legal title. If you didn't get the manufacturer's certificate of origin to the car at the time of purchase, okay, well, that's not your car to do with what you want. And because it's not your car and you don't have evidence that it's your car, well, then if the cop pulls you over and that car's information is on his computer, well, he can presume to do whatever he wants, because in reality, it's the state's car. It's not your car. Because just like the land patent takes that land out of the public domain, well, the same way your car would not end up on the cop's computer. They say they try to go after people with land patents, and then they'll fake sell the land, and then whoever buys the tax sale tries to insure it and tries to mortgage it, and they can't, because it's not. When the mortgage company wants to find the land in the public domain registry, they can't. Or when the insurance company wants to know where the land is held in the public domain, they don't have a way to find it because it's not there anymore. All right, so there's a difference between stuff that show up on the computer and stuff that don't show up on the computer. Let's see here. Here we go. Here's a nasty case. The Supreme Court of California said that being a part of the freehold, that's a Magna Carta word, a patent issued in the usual form by the United States, the state cannot prevent them. This is the Supreme Court of Michigan. I need to tag Michigan on this. Matter of fact, I need to tag Michigan and California on here. What is this? This is land patent, but it's also California and Michigan. They said being a part of the freehold, the Supreme Court of California said being a part of the freehold, a patent issued by the United States, the state government cannot prevent them. And then the Supreme Court of Michigan said that patents issued by the United States are unassailable in an action at law. Didn't we look up that word? Unassailable? Unassailable. Unable to be questioned, attacked, or defeated. Unassailable. Mississippi Supreme Court. I need to tag Mississippi on this. There we go. Let's see here. Actually, I do have Mississippi tagged on here. I sure do. All right. The Supreme Court of Mississippi said that Both cases are sustained as valid title. The land patent is evidence that all preliminary steps have been taken to justify its existence, its issuance. Montana, the Supreme Court of Montana, I read this a couple days ago. They said that a land patent is the highest possible evidence of title. When a patent for public land is issued, such patent is not open to collateral attack. You think fighting taxes is a fight? Wait till you get in court over these land patent things. They said it's the hardest thing you'll ever fight for. They say you can get the land patent and be in court the next day. They don't want to hear it. You think the government breaking the law about your traffic stop? Wait till you get over this land stuff. Yeah, this stuff nasty. The Supreme Court of Nebraska, let me tag Nebraska real quick. Yeah, you think your little traffic stop is a problem. Yeah, wait till they drag you in there over that. Yeah, not paying taxes on land. Yeah, they don't want to hear that. They said, no, you paying something. They say you can read all these cases. They'll still act like they sold it. They'll sell it in a tax sale. And then the dude who buys it will try to insure it, and he'll come back to the courts and say, well, I can't actually pay the insurance on this land or this house that's on this land because they want this magical number that they say they can't find. And then the people who try to take a mortgage out on the land, they say they can't mortgage it because it's not in the public domain for them to find to try to make a collateral attack on. Oh, that's nasty. They said the Supreme Court of Nebraska said the doctrine is established by numerous decisions of the Supreme Court of the United States that the land patent cannot be collaterally attacked. The patent might have been lawfully issued, and that is against collateral attack. And that patent is the evidence of such determination and is unassailable collaterally. They say it again. The land patent to be superior as the evidence of legal title. Oh, here we go. Who is this? It's like a circuit court, I think. All right. The circuit court said that a land patent of the United States is an adjudication by a quasi-judicial tribunal. The land department, which the government has entrusted the determination of the claims of applicants for titles to the public lands to the patentee. And it raises the presumption of right and regularity in all the proceedings antedating it and of the perfect title in the grantee. The validity of the land patent was impervious to collateral attack. Impervious, that's nasty. I don't even know what that word means. Impervious. Not allowing fluid to pass through. They said no admiralty can flow through here. Because collateral is a banking term. You know what a bank is? Who knows what a bank is? Dang it, I'm out of tea. I'm out of tea. The bank is the thing you're on right before you go into water. It's the thing that takes you into the water. That's what a bank is. Actually, I have this. What is a bank? See, we don't know the words we use every day. A bank, they said a bank is the utmost border of dry land. It's the thing that takes you into the water. When ships come in, where do they stop? At the bank. They got us, boys. They got us. What's a beach? It's a bank. What's a bay? It's a bank. What they say, on the bank of a river? Okay, well, what's that? That's the thing that the ship or the canoe or the little boat will stop at and facilitate trade. Say commerce. They got us. They got us. They said that's what a bank is. Every time you make a deposit, you send that thing into the water, into international waters. You put that thing on a ship, and somebody on the other side of that bank is taking it to their country. Oh, man. They got us, boys. They said the word bank is the anglicized form of the word bankus. They said the bankus is a bench, or sitting in the bank is the meeting of 4 judges. So what's a bank? They say a bank is the king's bench. That's the thing that takes you into admiralty. You want to be an admiralty? Just keep going to the bank. They said there are no banks in the United States Constitution, y'all. That's how you know it wasn't written by attorneys. Somebody say, oh, it was written by attorneys. No, it wasn't. You can't find it in there. They had a treasury, not a bank. They said this thing called a bank is the utmost border in dry land. They said in commercial law, it is a place for the deposit of money. They said every version of this word means the exact same thing. So a bank, they say in another dictionary that the bank is a court. Well, they say it. They say it there. They say the bank is a judge. People tell me all the time, the judge is a banker. Okay, well, what does that mean? Look. They said it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places. And among the Jews, so they said at the doors of churches, at markets, and among the Jews in the temple. Who did Jesus kick out of the temple? Wasn't it the money changers? Wasn't it the bankers? See, y'all think they went to church and Jesus was in church and he kicked them out of the church. No. In the Old Testament, David says that his father's house, or the father's house, was the courts. So who did Jesus kick out of? He kicked the merchants or the bankers or the banks out of the courts. The same thing we complain about every single day. He said, well, this definition of bank says it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places, at the doors of churches, at the markets, and among the Jews in the temples. They used tables or benches for their convenience. What did Jesus turn over? The tables of the money changers? That table so used was called a bank. No, let me read it right. It was called a banshee. And the traders themselves were bankers or benchers. Benchers. They were in court, y'all. When they say Jesus kicked them out of the temple, they wasn't going to church on Sunday. These were court processions. What does Jesus say? He says, woe to you, lawyers, because you load men down with burdens and you yourselves do not lift one finger to help them. Yeah. Well, they say this thing called the bank, it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places, say the courts, at markets. Okay, they say this is the law dictionary on the word bank. Okay, well, they got this thing called the forum. There's a case. Oh, I don't have I have it, but I'm not going to pull it up. It says that in order for them to get jurisdiction, they have to have minimum contacts inside of a forum. Minimum contacts is when you go to the DMV and get a state ID. Okay. All right. So that's minimum contacts inside of a forum. Well, they call that forum in Roman law, the same Roman law that was in Jesus's day, a marketplace. They say in the city of Rome where public business was transacted. They say this is the same stuff. And they, in this law dictionary, y'all, they cite the book of Mark. Mark 11:15. What does Mark 11:15 say? See, they'll let you get in college and act like, oh, the Bible's not real. They don't talk about that. Oh, we're all atheists. 11:15. Okay, there we go. I read it all the time. Let's see here. They said that Jesus cleansed the temple. They said, so they came to Jerusalem, and then Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple. He overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who sold doves, which is a mistranslation, but I don't have time to prove that. So you go to the word bank in the law dictionary, they say, okay, well, this thing is the anglicized word of the word bankis, sitting, or another word called bank, B-A-N-C, sitting in bank, and it is the bench of the justice. Okay, the magistrate, the guy we just talked about for the past 3 hours. They said that's what the bank was. They said sitting in bank was when 4 judges were together in court. And then they got another little citation that says the bank is the king's bench. And they said, where I started this, they said a bank is the uttermost part of dry land. That's the thing that takes you into admiralty. And then they say in the commercial law, as if none of that other stuff is commercial law, is a place for the deposit of money. I gotta sneeze. Let's see. All right. And then they give you a little explanation. They say it was the custom of the early money changers. Oh, well, we know about those money changers. We heard of those. We just got through reading about them. Jesus went into the temple and began to drive out those who bought and sold in the temple. And then he overturned the tables of the money changers and the seats of those who were there. Then this law dictionary says that it was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public place. This is a law dictionary, y'all. Who transact their business in public places, at the doors of churches, at markets, and among the Jews in the temple. They said it like the temple and the churches were not the same thing. It wasn't. The thing they called the temple was the courts. They just called themselves the justices who sat at the bench. And then they say they use these tables or benches for their convenience in counting and assorting their coins. They said this table that Jesus turned over in the book of the Bible that they cited in the law dictionary, this table was called a bank. And the traders themselves were bankers or benchers. They were talking about the courts the entire time. What is second or First Peter says? Well, don't let them make merchandise out of you. They said them with feigned words will make merchandise out of you. They said this is all connected. They said this thing called a forum, the DMV that y'all go to, said Jesus ran out the money changers because they turned his father's house into a den of thieves and robbers. Jesus was born, lived, and executed under Roman government. Israel at that time was conquered by Rome. Who you think control them still? They want you to blame the Jews for everything, but that ain't who controlling it. They've never been under their own control. Since the days of Jesus, they've been controlled by Rome. All this stuff is nasty. In Matthew 21:12, I read this all the time on here. Yeshua entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. They say, yeah, you blame the government, but did you stand in line at the DMV? Because he said he threw out the merchants and their customers. Say, ouch. See, the truth is not always your friend. Sometimes you don't want to hear the truth. Sometimes we don't want to obey the law, but we want to be rescued from our bad decisions. Sometimes we don't get that. All right, so it says that Yeshua entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. Don't be a customer. He said, and he upset the desk of the money changers. That's the legal definition of the word bank. Jesus went into the temple, drove out the merchants, knocked over the tables of the money changers. Say it in another one. Jesus went straight to the temple, threw out everyone who set up shop, buying and selling. He kicked over the tables of the loan sharks and the stalls of merchants. You go to the Bible dictionaries the Bible dictionary, and you look up the word money changer. They say this is the word clipped, or a rate of change, or the money changer, or a money clipper. They said this means to cut into small pieces or to cut short. They said this happened in the court of the Gentiles. I told you they were talking about the courts this entire time. You think when you go to the bank, that's the bank. That's a bank, but that ain't the bank. They say when you go before the guy in the black robe, he's counting his coins right there. He said, well, I'm about to go to Ruth Chris with this one. Yep, how do you plea? Yeah, we're going to cut short this thing called your rights. They said this happened in the court of the Gentiles, or in the temple precincts. They called the court and the temple the exact same thing. They said the magnitude of this traffic had introduced the bankers or brokers' business. What is the historical source that says the temple was a court? I just read it to you. Vine's Expository Dictionary. I said a Bible dictionary said that the word money changer means the thing they did was cut currency into small pieces, or they cut short. And this was what happening in the court of the Gentiles, or in the temple precincts. This is based on Matthew. They got Matthew 21:12. And I just read Matthew 21:12. That is not a case. It is not the case, but it is the law. And I just read you that in the law dictionary, well, you may have came in late, but in the law dictionary, they cite Matthew or Mark 11:15, which I read earlier, which is just another translation of Matthew's account in 21:12 that says this definition of the word bank. It was the custom of the early money changers to transact their business in public places, at the doors of churches, at markets, and among the Jews in the temple. They used this table or bench for their convenience in counting and sorting their coins. They called this table a bank. And the traders themselves were bankers or benchers. And that the first definition of the word bank in a law dictionary, it is a bench of justice. He just want to argue. Everybody say bye-bye. This is the law we're talking about. You don't get to the law. The Bible says that all of the law and the prophets are concerning me. So you don't get to think you know the law and it don't end up at Christ. If you disobey the law, you answer to Christ. If you obey the law, you get rewarded with Christ. And when you get to the law dictionary, it's either telling you the truth or misconstruing the interpretations of what is revealed in the Bible. So there's no part you think you know the law and you get to disregard the Bible, because that is the source of where the information has been revealed. So when the law dictionary cites the book of Mark 11:15, well, they know something that we don't know. See how I shrink a crowd like that, baby, because the truth will make everybody scatter like roaches. You don't get to disregard. You don't get to think you know the law and don't end up at Christ. The Apostle Paul said the law is a tutor that leads you to Christ. You want to know the law? Okay, Jesus entered the temple grounds and drove out those who were doing business there, both the merchants and their customers. Don't be a customer. And he upset the desk of the money changers. Who were the desk of the money changers? The judges, those who worship Baal. See, they don't tell you, but they say here the Jews in the temple, those were not the Hebrew people. Those were Romanized people who enforced Roman law inside of religious houses. And they used ecclesiastical Roman law to pervert the truth in the Bible. So you read this story and these preachers of today don't tell the truth. So they'll say, oh, well, he went into the temple. That means he went into the church. No, he didn't. I got it in this book. He went into the courts. There's no point in history where the word temple never meant the court. King David said that the temple was the court. I got in the first page. What's a court? They say a court is the place where the sovereign sojourns with his regal retinue. Say Jesus and the 12. They said, that's not what I'm looking for. A court is the king's palace, the place where justice is to be judicially administered. The king's palace. There you go. He said, when he kicked them out the temple, he said, you turned my father's house into a den of thieves and robbers. He was talking about the courts. He's always been talking about the courts. There's no more corrupt place on the planet than a court. They said in the other dictionaries, that the definition of a word bank is a table, a counter, or a bench. Okay, well, where do you go in the guy in the black robe? A bench. They say a place of business of a money changer. They call it banco. They said this magnitude of this traffic had introduced the bankers or the brokers business. There you go. Why do all these scammers and feds and people talk about commercial instruments, negotiable instruments, promissory notes, all that? That's them. An attorney gave you a little spin on it and y'all believed it. But they'll do whatever to get you in front of them. This is all commercial law at the end of the day. This is commercial law versus the common law all day, every day. They said in the law book they cite where they say the bank of the sea is the uttermost place of dry land. They said the bank of the sea. They got a whole type. This is a law book on commercial statutes. They said the use of the banks is common to all of the king's liege, as to tie ships and boats to the trees and to tow them to and fro and laid and unlaid their merchandises thereon. That's Old English. They said that's from the 1600s. They said, yeah, what does a bank do? It's the thing that gets you onto a commercial ship, that gets you into commerce, that gets you into admiralty. Well, he didn't say we were dead to the law. We were dead to the consequence of not obeying the law. That's why you're to be baptized, so that you share in the death and the resurrection of Christ. But the law's not been done away with, and it won't be done away with. Just like you plant a seed in the ground and it bears fruit. Okay, well, that principle will never be done away with. And that's the law. What they were talking about were statutes. You go and study Deuteronomy. They say the thing they called the law was not what was written down. The thing Christ obeyed was not what was written down. He obeyed natural law. They say the significance of the Ten Commandments was not that they were on tablets, was that God spoke the law to man, called Moses. And then he spoke it to the people. So the bank of the sea is the utmost border of dry land. You want to be in admiralty? Participate in banking. Sign up for everything they say, obey all their rules, do exactly what they say, and you'll be in a bank. The bank is the threshold into admiralty jurisdiction, or the law of the sea. I say this all the time. Every time water is mentioned in the Bible, it represents death. What's the first thing you know about water? That God judged the entire planet with it. He drowned the entire planet as judgment with water. What's the next thing you notice? Moses led people out, and God drowned the enemies, or the Egyptians, or the Canaanites, with water. What's the next thing you find out about water? This guy named Jonah was thrown overboard into the water. And for 3 days, he says he was in Sheol. Okay, well, what does Sheol mean? It means death. You get to Christ. He's already been baptized by John the Baptist. And he tells Peter, well, you're not actually ready to be baptized with the baptism that I'm about to be baptized with. What is he talking about? His crucifixion. He said, I got a baptism coming. No, he said, no, John the Baptist baptized you. He said, no. That's not the baptism I'm talking about. He called his crucifixion a baptism. What's a baptism? A symbolism of being buried and raised up, being submerged into water. So Christ calls his death a baptism. What does the Apostle Paul say? The Apostle Paul says that when the Egyptians were drowned by God in the Old Testament, Paul called that a baptism. What does he say? What does the Apostle John say in the book of Revelation? He says, all who participate in commerce. Oh, this is nasty. This hurts me too. They got this thing called a lake of fire. Oh, crap. That's a baptism. Oh, I don't want that baptism. No, sir. He said that's for all the people he kicked out of the temple, those who were buying and those who were selling. Make sure you're not a customer. Make sure you're not a customer. This stuff is, it ain't, I told you the law ain't always your friend. Uh-oh. So yeah, I know I got all that from land patents. Yeah, they said this thing called the money changer, the same definition of the word bank, introduced this thing called traffic. Well, you go to the law dictionaries, you look up traffic, you look up, I can't say another word, but you look up commerce, you look up transportation, you look up all these words. They're all related. They're all connected. What does myrrh mean? We talk about this all the time. Myrrh. Myrrh means the sea. Or what is chant? Chant is an incantation. An incantation is explicitly outlawed by God. They would call them incantations or enchantments or divinations. They'll say that in the book of Acts. They'll say this lady had a spirit of divination. Okay, well, all that's the same thing. So when you participate in the myrrh chants, okay, well, they say the word myrrh means sea, but it also means death. What they say, myrrh means sea. Merchant means sea enchantment. The prefix of myrrh means sea. Merchant would literally translate to the enchanting of sometimes dangerous melodies. They said these songs, which we don't know what a song is. You think a song is what Taylor Swift sang? That's not a song. They saw a song go way deeper than that. You think a song is what they put on TikTok? No. They said a song is the thing they used to lure sailors to the water, and that's where they would drown. And they said the enchantment of the sea would lure these people into participating in commerce to a point where you no longer know how to survive without convenience, ease, without air conditioning and a refrigerator and a washer machine. They say all of that is commerce. All of that is the merchant. They said the merchant is a song of payment. In actual admiralty or in actual maritime, they call it a sea shanty. SHANTY. A sea shanty. A sea shanty is a type of traditional work song sung by sailors to coordinate hard labor on a ship. They said the chant de la mer is the song of the sea, the merchant. We're all doing the merchant. They said this term merchant is a historical reference used to describe Phoenician traders who utilize incantations and specific commercial practices to enchant other populations into trade. It is a clever turn of phrase rather than a genuine form of magic and traditional maritime religious chant. This is Google, so they're trying to confuse you. They say, no, it's not magic. It's not witchcraft. It's exactly what it is. Go look up what the Bible has to say about enchantments and incantations and divination. This is a law professor from the Middle East. He said that the Phoenicians were Canaanites and that these Phoenicians were called merchants. He said the words were separate. They put them together to make you stop thinking about the word. Because if you already knew that mer meant sea, or mer meant water, or that mer meant death, and then you knew that chant, what do they do in Latin? What do they do in the Roman Catholic Church? They do chants all day, don't they? So if you knew those two words were separate to begin with, oh, well, then you would know what the merchants or who the merchants were. So they put the word together, they modernized it, and now you think a merchant is Coca-Cola or whatever is sold at Walmart. No, they said that this word merchant only meant one group of people. They call it multiple times that the law merchant or commercial law or business law or corporate law is private law for private people. They said these Phoenicians created this thing called phonetics or phonics. And then as a result, they created an alphabet. And these Phoenicians employed incantations through repetitious language to seduce people into participating in commerce. They say you don't even know you're participating in commerce no more. They said all merchants and merchandising or commerce and commercial law is subject to admiralty courts. I say this all the time. If you end up in front of a guy in a black robe, it was because an issue of a contract, because they don't have no power to do anything else. So we use the word school. We don't have no clue what a school is. What's a school? A school is a vessel or a ship for merchant training. Or it is a ship used for seamanship, or a vessel or an academy, a floating academy for seamanship. That's where people send their kids every single day. Yeah, go be a good little merchant. Go participate in commerce. They're not teaching you life skills there, right? We never learned anything valuable there. I can't tell you what I learned there. 70 grand in debt later, I didn't learn nothing new. Can't tell you what I learned, right? So they said this thing called school is a maritime term. It's for those who participate with the merchants. These are the same people that Jesus kicked out of the temple, by the way. These Phoenicians, go look them up. They worship, this is easy Google searches. The Phoenicians explicitly worshiped Baal. Well, Baal is a false god. It's a false idol. That god was never real. Just like the same way these people worship paper. And they say the statute is the law and that you violated a statute. Well, a statute can't be violated. Just like the statute of liberty can't be violated. It's an idol. Do you understand that? It's not real. It's an idol made with human hands. The book of Job says it's a dangerous thing to take the work of one's hands and call it God. Or even greater is to take the work of his hands and call it God. They said, who did Jesus kick out of the temple? He kicked out merchants. He kicked out the merchants. See, when they translated the Bible, they put them words together. Them words were separate. Them words were separate. That law professor from the Middle East knew something we did not know. He said they didn't call them merchants. They were called merchants. And you go look up every Bible dictionary. And that word merchant 100% of the time means Canaanite or Phoenician. Okay, well, that's a private group of people right there. And every time you participate in commerce, they're not there for your rights. They're not there for the common law of England. They're not there for the Constitution. They're there because of a private body of law that they created. They said, we didn't tell you to participate in this. But because you're participating in this, no, we don't do no trial by juries. We don't do no common law. We don't do no injured party. They said, no, we're here for something else. Right? They said a chant is a type of repetitive song characterized by rhythmic and repeated delivery of words and phrases. Negotiable instruments, equity, a court, the judge is a banker. Oh, the Constitution is really a trust. Or all the other words we use, like school or hospital or insurance. All of those are maritime terms. We don't know what we're saying. We have no clue. They said the word mer in French means sea. The definition of the word merchant is one who owns ships and trades by means of them with foreign nations. They said this is private law. You're not even supposed to be engaging with this unless you have an actual corporation. Look. This is a law book from the 1600s on maritime and naval law. They said this kind of naval society is ancient. It was not invented yesterday or today for the first time. They're talking about the 1600s. It wasn't invented in the 1600s. They said this stuff is ancient. They said in his day, this guy called Solomon, king of the Hebrews, entered into certain classes of society with Hiram, who was the king of the Tyrians. This Greek word, I can't pronounce, is an indication that it was already in use among the Greeks, not only by them, but by the Romans, to whom we have a rich witness. They said this thing called maritime, this ain't new. Jordan Maxwell didn't come up with this. He didn't figure it out. They said this thing's been going on for ages. I just told you they were dealing with this stuff in the book of Moses, well, not the book of Moses, in Exodus with these people called the Egyptians. Okay, well, who influenced the Egyptians to get where they were? The Phoenicians, the Canaanites. Look it up. This is all on Google. I'm not telling you something you can't figure out. Google it. Did the Canaanites influence Egypt? They say, oh, they're going to say, oh, yeah, they definitely. Actually, I have this. Let me see. I'm going to read it. They're going to say, yeah, they definitely influenced Egypt. They the ones that set it up for them. Hold on. I'm going to get it. He said, oh, yeah, the Egyptians got their stuff exclusively from the Canaanites. There we go. Look. The Canaanites didn't just excel in Egypt, but they significantly influenced it. They got this name, I can't pronounce it, who brought innovations like a horse-drawn chariot. That's in the Bible. What did the Egyptians chase the people of God across the sea with? A horse-drawn chariot. Who created a horse-drawn chariot? Who created a horse and buggy? The Canaanites. They said they've been at the forefront of innovation for years, forever. They said the Canaanites brought the Egyptians this thing called a horse-drawn chariot. And later through deep cultural exchange, say commerce, the Egyptians adopting Canaanite deities. Come on, man. This stuff is as old as time. And technologies. They adopted Canaanite deities and technologies. They said they established economic ties with the Egyptians. They said these are the people that were. So we got to go back in time. What happened? How did these people get to be who they were? Okay, well, there's this. Actually, I got this. Commerce and the Constitution. Y'all remember this? Yeah. Here we go. I have this. Commerce and the U.S. Constitution. Y'all can't see that. It's backwards, ain't it? Boom. There we go. Y'all see it now? Can't see it still because it's freaking. There we go. There we go. Bring it a little closer. Give it. There we go. You still probably can't see it, but all right. Well, this dude called Noah. You heard of Noah? Okay, Noah and the flood. You know the story. All right. Well, God drowned the planet, but Noah had a son called Ham. All right. Ham was the son of Noah. What happened with Noah and Ham? Okay, well, Noah gets off the boat. He's been with his relatives for 40 days and 40 nights, just like you just did over Thanksgiving and Christmas. And he's annoyed with them. And so he goes and plants a vineyard, right? He plants a vineyard. He's, you know what I mean? He's getting right. And Ham says, the Bible says that Ham looked at his father's nakedness. That word means raya, which means to stare intently at his father's nakedness. Okay, well, as a result of Ham's perversion, Noah pronounced a curse on Canaan. What do you mean? He pronounced what? Canaan didn't do nothing. Well, yeah, Canaan didn't do nothing except have a pervert as a father. And they said that Noah didn't do magic. Noah didn't have magical powers. He didn't give Canaan a curse. He pronounced something this is natural law. This is the natural consequence of reaping what you sow. If you sow to the flesh, you will from the flesh reap corruption. Okay, well, Noah or Ham sowed to the flesh. And as a result, there's a rap song. I want y'all to listen to it. It's called, what's it called? It's by a guy named The Truth. D-A space Truth. The song is called Click Regrets. I'm going to read it. I'm going to read the lyrics. The first verse. Let me see here. Click Regrets lyrics. Boom. Click no regrets. Here we go. This is natural law. This is the law of natural law. He says, yada, yada, yada. Where's the first verse? Here we go. They say experience is the best teacher. That's what they teach us in school. I say experience is the teacher of fools, because a wise man will learn from another man's errors and apply that to determine what he shall choose. Every life has a voice. You make a statement with every choice. Low valleys, high hills like female shoes. But if life is just an experiment and we learn from experience, then we are not being spirit-led and we shall lose. He says, we don't believe in karma. We believe in a seed and a farmer. He said, you know the seed of his daughter? No. He said, you know the deceit of a father can affect the seed, his daughter. He said, you know the deceit of a father can affect the seed, his daughter. He said, yada, yada, yada. You don't believe in mama. He said, in other words, you know you reap what you sow. You sow seeds of wrong decisions and that tree shall grow. He said, we got a chance for his people to know that by his grace, we learn from the mistakes detailed in the scrolls. So if you run into a brick wall, it's only because of your thick skull and not because he didn't leave us a note. Right? He says in another verse, I'm not going to read the whole verse. He says, if you plant an apple seed, don't plan for an orange. Where he said that at? Yeah. He said, just because judgment ain't sudden, don't mean that it ain't coming. So if you plant an apple seed, don't plan for an orange. What happened? This guy named Ham was a pervert. And the result of being a pervert is that your kids are perverts. This is all over TikTok today. You don't need to learn this from me. People half naked on the internet, dancing and doing stupid stuff, saying all type of obscenities. Okay, well, this is the result of the lack of righteous fathers and mothers. They said this is how commerce started. So as a result, Noah pronounced a curse on Canaan. But Canaan didn't do nothing, right? But this is not People say it all the time. Well, brother, I didn't consent. I didn't consent. Well, did your mother teach you the law, or did your father teach you the law, or did your grandparents teach you the law? All right. They didn't teach us that we weren't supposed. Did they teach us any life skills? No, they sent us to school. What's that? A merchant training academy. Okay. Well, that's how it works. So the result of his deceit or his perversion was that his son became a pervert. Right. That's what a curse is. All right. So the Canaan, I think the Bible says that Canaan will be the servant of Shem and Ham, or Shem and Japheth. Those were the other sons of Noah. All right, so Canaan creates a nation. The Bible says that from one man he creates an entire nation. Okay, well, these Canaan became the Canaanites, right? Boom, easily. All right, so these Canaanites, as I already got here, they went down to Egypt and they influenced Egypt. Didn't they just say it? They said they created this thing called the chariots. Horse-drawn chariots. Okay, well, that's the same thing that they chased the people of God with out of Egypt. And then God drowned the Egyptians who were in their chariots. All right. And then these people, Canaanites, were so hated because they created contracts on everything that they had to change their name to Phoenicians. They changed their name to Phoenicians because they got the monopoly on some purple dye and they only sold it to royalty as a result. So you could tell then who was under Phoenician influence or who was in a commercial contract by the kings who wore purple or by the royalty who wore purple. Yeah, this stuff is nasty. All right. So then these people who were Canaanites and Phoenicians, okay, I just told you in the Bible dictionaries, you look up the word merchant or you look up the word Canaanite or you look up the word Phoenician, that word merchant is there 100% of the time. So if I ask you who are the merchants, you can't say anybody but the Canaanites and the Phoenicians, which are the same people. They're no different. So the people here, same people. The people here, the same people. Same people, all merchants, all commercial law comes from these people. Do you understand that? Does that make sense? Okay, well, where were these Canaanites and these Phoenicians? They just told you in this law book from the 1600s. I don't forgot where it was at. There we go. This dude in the 1600s talking about this kind of naval society was not invented yesterday. They said this guy called King Solomon, the king of the Hebrews, entered into a certain class. That means a contract with Hiram, king of the Tyrants. Okay, well, you go study Tyre and Sidon. That's where you'll find the Canaanites. That's where you'll find the Phoenicians. That's where you'll find the merchants. Okay, well, all of this was on the Mediterranean Sea. Well, where's the Mediterranean Sea? It is the sea that joins Europe, Asia, Africa. And that's where maritime, I got the camera backwards, maritime and commercial law and admiralty, all of that got developed by these people. Is anybody getting anything out of this? It's okay if you don't. I'm just gonna clip it and put it on YouTube. But this is all the same stuff. They said, yeah, they said, and then they ended up in Rome. They said this is the indication, which was already among the Greeks, not only by them and by the Romans. You study these people, they went from Egypt to Babylon, from Babylon to Rome. I got an English law book that says if you want to study Roman law, you got to go to Babylon. Okay, well, who set up Babylon? Same people. Nobody knew. Who did Jesus kick out of the temple? Nobody knew. The same people. These are the same people. Who's in the book of Revelations? They say, I got it. Let me see. I got it somewhere. Look, 2 Peter 2:3. Through covetousness, they shall with feigned words make merchandise of you. They said the word myrrh and the word admiralty, same people, nothing different. All of these principles, all the things you think you're in charge of. No. Let me search it again. Merchant, say merchant, M-E-R space C-H-A-N-T-A-N-T. Excuse me. Yeah, they said, here we go. This is a book on business law. They say these people called the merchants of the Italian city-states took precepts from the ancient Roman Empire. Among the merchants of all of Europe, hence this body of business or commercial law obtained the name law merchant. They said anytime you hear about agencies or sales and negotiable instruments and insurance and carriage and debt, they said there was no such thing as debt before these people. There was no such thing as debt. They said there was no such thing as a purchase. They said the law of agency, sales, negotiable instruments, insurance, carriage, debt, guarantee, stoppage, and transit. Every time you get pulled over, that's commercial law. Liens, there's no such thing as a lien outside of these Canaanites, these Phoenicians, these merchants. I can't. The camera's backwards on my end, so yeah, they said partnership, bankruptcy. Anytime you hear all these words, these come from one group of people. They say it. They say this, all of these phrases, all of these principles and subjects of law, which they call business law, comes from one group of people. They were made by traveling international private merchants. You study these people. They said they had no home anywhere. They got kicked out of every country. That's why they were traveling international private merchants, because they would make these fake contracts. They wouldn't keep their end of the deal and they steal everybody's stuff. There you go. This is another book. They said the merchants of the Italian city-states took precepts from the ancient law of the Roman Empire. No, that's the same thing I just read. But I read it earlier, Matthew 21:12. Jesus entered the temple grounds and he kicked out the merchants. Revelations 18:3. For all the nations have drunk the wine of her wrath, and the kings of the earth have committed. I can't say some of these words because they'll flag my live stream. And then they say the merchants of the earth have become rich through the abundance of her luxury. These are the same people. This word merchant doesn't mean something brand new today that it didn't mean. Here we go. Here's the other book. They say the law merchant or mercantile law was the comprehensive body of privately administered rules and customs enforced by the merchants throughout the medieval commercial world. They said they've been throughout every major point in history. And remember, they said these people were cursed. So what did they spread? Well, they spread curses. They said this comprehensive body of privately administered rules enforced as law. They didn't say it was law. They said they enforced it as law. They said they act like it's law, don't they? They say you broke the law and then they just show a statute. Well, that's not the law. Right? This is the same stuff we complain and argue about. Okay, well, that's them. That's all who created it. You think it's that guy in no. This is somebody you don't see behind the scenes. They said from Italy, the law merchants spread to England. There you go. I tell y'all this all the time. You study the common law of England. Anything after William the Conqueror is the merchants. William the Conqueror was French. He was from Normandy. He was under Roman control. Okay. Well, who you think control Rome today? These same people. There's nothing new under the sun. That's what the Bible say. They said this stuff is where it gradually underwent centralization. They say London today is the banking capital of the world. Okay, well, there's no such thing as banking without these people. You understand that? This is crazy. This should be blowing your mind. There's no such thing as banking without these people. We just talked about the word bank all night. Okay, well, this is them. What's a bank? Go look at the Mediterranean Sea. The entire Europe, Asia, Africa is surrounded by a bank of water, a bank that leads you into the Mediterranean Sea. They said the bank of the sea is the utmost border of dry land. They said this thing called the bank is a bench of the justices, the guys in the black robes. You know who the black robes, you know what the black robe means? This is why I find this fascinating, and I thank God that I've been able to learn this stuff. But when I first started learning this stuff, I kept hearing that, well, these judges and these attorneys are the priests of Baal and the prophets of Baal. And I'm like, well, I don't really know what that means, because when you grow up in church, they talk about Baal meaning something totally different than what it actually means, right? So you start learning and they start talking about Baal. Well, in Elijah's day, these are the same people. You go study Elijah, go Google it. Google it. The Phoenicians and the Canaanites explicitly worship Baal. Explicitly worship Baal. Okay? These people would perform sacrifices, and the incense and the smoke of their sacrifices would turn their robes black. Right. Yep, that's what. And I can't say certain stuff, not because I'm afraid, because they'll censor the live, but go search the types of sacrifices that the priest of Baal did. Yeah, it's very disgusting. And so, yeah, these are the people. These are the same people. There's nothing new. This isn't new stuff. We just didn't know it. They lied to us. They create a language where we didn't. They said they created the alphabet. Yep, that's the word. So you get Roe v. Wade. You get all this type of foolishness as a result. So these are the priests of Baal. These are the same people. How do you spell Baal? Baal. Baal, or BA apostrophe AL. Another thing I looked up, I found a book a couple months or years ago. They say that every ceremony of a Freemason is Baal worship. So just look up Elijah and the prophets of Baal and the priest of Baal. These are the same people. Go look them up. The Phoenicians explicitly worship Baal. You can Google it right now. I'm finna Google it. Phoenicians worshipped Baal. Yep. Baal worships, or Phoenician worship centered on Baal, a powerful Canaanite fertility god. Come on, man. Yep. Spread throughout Egypt and the Mediterranean. There we go. Same people. Yep. Now look, I got this other book. They said this law merchant started in England in the 1200s, in 1272. They showed up right after that Magna Carta, didn't they? They said, no, we're not doing no Magna Carta here, baby. We got something else for that. They got this thing called the law merchant. When was the Magna Carta? 1215? They said, no. Now watch this. This is nasty. This is a law book on commercial law. You go into college, they say, the Bible's not real, it's fake, and all that stuff. And then you go to law, and that's all they talk about is the Bible. They said these special courts, hold on, let me read it right. They said these goldsmith bankers seem to have started the use of a check in England. They said they found a check in the year 1671. They said the first bill of exchange came in 1603. Okay, remember, this is not England. This is Normandy French England now. After 1066, England was no longer the same. The common law that we count dear, trial by jury, grant due process, all that stuff, came before William the Conqueror. The Anglos and the Saxons say they trace their ancestry back to the people of Moses. So yeah, they said in 1603 they had a case about the Bill of Exchange, and at the time Englishmen had been using negotiable instruments for centuries. So they said these centuries started in 1272. In 1272, a Jewish exeter show a note payable to a named person or bearer. It was in cases of the mayor's court or in a court of admiralty. Who created admiralty law? Same people. Same who created admiralty courts. Same thing. Same people. It's backwards, so I can't point right. But yeah, same people. They said these special courts followed what special courts? The Court of Admiralty followed the law merchant, a tradition with an international and maritime flavor. They said the rules for bill of exchange can be traced back to the money changers in Italy. Okay, well, there's only one that's what they mean by Italy. They don't want to point this out. So they'll say Italy. Yeah. We know what's going on in Italy. Thanks though. Hosea 12:1. This guy named Ephraim was an evil spirit. Hosea 12:7, talking about this guy named Ephraim. They said this guy was a merchant and uses dishonest scales and loves to defraud. They said, this is a different translation of the same verse. They say this merchant in the first translation. The next translation, they call him a cunning Canaanite. And he uses deceitful scales and loves to oppress. The next one says that this guy named Ephraim from Canaan is a merchant, and the balances of the sea are in his hands, and loves to oppress. The next translation says that, that this guy named Ephraim is a trafficker. The same translation or same verse, different translation. So they said merchant, Canaanite, and trafficker are interchangeable. They say anytime you hear them words, they all mean the same thing. And the balances of the sea are in his hand, and he loves to oppress. So the Canaanites, Phoenicians created merchant, maritime, and admiralty law. The Canaanites and Phoenicians explicitly worship Baal. They said Elijah had to execute the prophets of Baal. This guy in the Bible named King Jehu had to execute the prophets of Baal. Yeshua, or the Christ, had to turn over the tables and ran them out of the temple, which were the courts, because they turned his father's house into a den of thieves and robbers. Look. Revelation 18:23 says that for your merchants were the great men of the earth, and by their sorcery all the nations are deceived. Say we're in the end times, y'all. We're in it. These preachers lying to us. Oh, here we go. I found it. The word merchant is this is a Bible dictionary thing I got. It says the word merchant is literally in the Hebrew Canaanite. They say you never get this thing called merchant or commercial law, and it don't mean Canaanites. It never means anything different. Every time you hear the word commerce or commercial law or negotiable instruments or banking, they said it's the same group of people who created all of it. They said in this thing called the Chambers Encyclopedia that these Canaanites changed their name to Phoenician in 1200 BC. Same people. They said Revelation 18:9 verses 9 through 23 says the merchants of the earth will weep and mourn, for no one buys their merchandise anymore. So you got to understand, these are the people who took over. This is the people who held Israel or Jerusalem or whatever they were called in Jesus's day. These were the people that took over and implemented rule over Jerusalem, Israel, Bethlehem, all that region was all under Roman control. Jesus was born in Roman control. You know, Jesus had to, what was it? He had to leave. He didn't get counted amongst the census. What does that mean? In our day, that would mean he didn't have a birth certificate. That's one of the reasons they say you won't find anything about Jesus's upbringing. You won't find him until he's 12. Why? Because when you're not on the record, well, they don't keep up with you. They don't have a way to they don't know what school you went to or whatever and all that stuff. They say that. I mean, I wasn't there. So the Phoenicians are also the synagogue of Satan. I would say they created it. Remember well, you may not remember it, but the Phoenicians are here now. This is who's in Rome that we know now. Who we know in Rome? Who we know trying to control things from Rome today? It's the same thing I'm telling you. The people who controlled, yep, exactly. So this religious, you study ecclesiastical law. And I talk about this, I got videos on YouTube about equity and how all of equity works. Well, all this same group of people, they got all this. They control all this. Now, this is not the purpose of me having this conversation is not to talk about religion or any of that stuff, but this is just letting you know, okay, well, this is private. This is a private group. This is a private group of people. But that's who is controlling. This is who is currently being controlled by these Canaanites. And I would argue these Canaanites are being controlled by the enemy. The enemy. The enemy is not omnipotent. He can't be everywhere. Right? So he creates a system. And it seems like he's everywhere. No, they say the word devil means that word is in Latin diabolo. Diabolo just means to throw repeatedly. That's where they get the word merchant from. The word chant is a repetitive use of words. That's why I say we don't know what the word song means. A song don't mean what Taylor Swift sings. That's not a song. The song is the language that we speak every single day, and we don't know what those words mean, right? So we send our kids to school, and we don't know what the word school means, right? Or we go to the hospital, and we don't know what a hospital is. We participate in banking, and we don't know what a bank is. And we think that the magistrate or the guy in a black robe is the judge, and we don't know who the lawful judges are, right? The language is the song. That's why we don't learn half of this stuff unless we have law dictionaries, right? That's why I told y'all yesterday, the most important thing I do is have a law dictionary, is read law dictionaries. Does that make sense? Look, I got it again. I read a previous book. I found another book. They said there were traders in the book of Job, and the word Canaanite meant merchant. So you say you go to the book of Job, they're going to use the word Canaanite to mean merchant, or if you see the word merchant, it meant Canaanite. And I say here, the Phoenicians went to Babylon. I think it's in the book of Ezekiel or the book of Job, where they say, okay, well, this Babylon means a great city of commerce. I got books that say they know who the Antichrist is. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that they'll probably strike the live stream, but them comments that y'all made, them last two comments, that's who they got. They got books from like the 1500. When was the first English Bible? The first English Bible says it. They got a first English Bible. It wasn't William Tyndale. There was a book that came out before William Tyndale. There was a Bible that came out before William Tyndale. William Tyndale didn't finish the Bible in English language. He was martyred before then. So he never got to finish it. So somebody else came out with it in like the 1500s. And then they came out with like a Bible dictionary and that phrase. And then they got commentary under all these words in the book of Revelation. They got commentary where whoever wrote it is explaining what these words mean, and they say that the guy who is the anti, okay, well, they say POPE, that's who it's going to be. They said they already had all this stuff figured out, and they done changed our language and changed the way we see the world. So we don't know that stuff anymore. This is nasty, ain't it? And then again, I got encyclopedias where they talk about commercial law. Okay, well, they say the development of commercial law started in Egypt and Babylon. Okay, well, there was only two people there. There was only one group of people in both of these places influencing both of these places. We just read about how they created chariots for Egyptians. They sold, they got the market on purple dye and they sold it exclusively to royalty. So if you had purple dye on and calling yourself a king, that means you were in contract with the Phoenicians. Oh, yeah. There you go. Ezekiel said Babylonia is called by Ezekiel the land of traffic, and Babylon a city of merchants. Okay, well, there's only one group of people there. They say in Revelation 17, 1 through 2, that Babylon is described as a woman who sits on many waters. Say admiralty.